Hey guys, welcome to Approach the Nerd. And this week we are reviewing RWBY Ice Queendom episode 11. I did notice that StreamYard for some reason reset my time for PM. So if no one shows up to this stream, I understand why. I didn't catch it until about 5 minutes ago. So that was interesting. Also, I do plan on doing Stargirl season 3 episodes 2 review, and I'm still gonna do She-Hulk 3 through episodes 3 and 4 review, catch up review. I may do She-Hulk tomorrow, and I may do Stargirl later today. I have to watch it first. I haven't watched the episode, so bear with me. All right, guys, episode 11. This is where we get Team RWBY back together, and this episode was very interesting because where we left off last week, we had Blake willingly becoming Nega Blake. Then we had Nega Weiss, who, by the way, I'm going to just say this. Nega Weiss is still a lot nicer than she could have been. And the reason I'm going to say that is if you look through all of the series, right? If Nega Weiss was really trying to off her teammates, she wouldn't be trying to put them to sleep. She wouldn't have given them weapons to fight and ability to basically be able to use their semblances inside of her dream world. So Weiss really was not trying to take out her team. Now, Nega Blake is scary. Like, I feel like in this episode, Nega Blake was like, this is all of my rage about being a faunus and being, basically treated like crap, having my land taken away from us, having people just justify it with, saying, oh, we want to get along with you and just want to keep the peace and blah, 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 and then enslave faunus. And it's like all of that, all of Blake's anger is all in Nega Blake. And Nega Blake is scary as hell and still looks so much like Raven. It's so crazy to me. But yeah, so where we left off, like I said, Blake is Nega Blake now. Yang is still fighting the big golden statue, which is, Grandpa Nicholas. And then we have Jock running around in armor fighting John, and Pura and three little mini Weisses are kind of like his backup, which honestly, it's not a bad team if you think about it. I love how Pura is still looking after John, even in the dream world. I think that is amazing. And it's interesting because it's happening in Weiss's mindscape. So it's like maybe she sees it too. She sees the attraction that Pura has for John, even though John is completely oblivious. But yeah, so let's kind of break it down a little bit. So what I loved about the opening of this is we have Weiss literally still in her feelings about Blake fighting her. Like this whole time, it's like, how does this faunus get in here? Blah, blah, blah. But it's like she takes Blake and separates her from the idea of the bad white fangish faunus. And so when Blake is like attacking her, she's like, what is happening? Like, what is this? Come back to your senses. I mean, do I have to defeat you to get you to be, my Blake, basically? Which I do love, because if you really look at the series, even though this is not canon, this is the evolution of Weiss and Blake's friendship. And you see they become really good friends, especially if you check out like volume 7 and volume 8, you really see their connections a lot stronger. But it's kind of fast tracked in these episodes because you only have 12. So like she went from the episode where they kind of had it out about the White Fang and stuff before she was, before the Nightmare Grimm took over her, to basically, telling her that in that episode I always bring up where Blake goes to Sun after they find out she's a faunus and former White Fang, and Weiss is like, well, I don't really care about that. And then to being in the dream world where the Nightmare Grimm is like, you care, you can't let that go. She's a faunus, and faunuses are evil, and they steal from your company, and they killed all the people, board members and friends and family members, back in Atlas, and blah blah blah. But Weiss in her mind is still defending Blake. I think that is really cool. Like I just think that's really, really cool, because she was really upset. She's like, why are you fighting me? What is this? And even when like at the very pinnacle of their fight, she looks at her and sees the vines, and she's like, oh, I get it. Something's controlling you, because basically my Blake wouldn't do this to me. So I just think it's interesting how far they've come in this short amount of time in this series. RWBY is trying to get to the core to find the Nightmare Grimm. So she's on her own. She's using her weapon. She's fighting. She's not finding it. And then it dawns on her, she keeps thinking about the words that Weiss said when they had that little moment where she was giving her the coffee. And she basically is giving her hints. Basically, Weiss subconsciously is helping RWBY find the Grimm, the Nightmare Grimm. And she's like, it's going to be hiding, in front of you, hiding in the shadows. And so, Ruby's like, wait, what? I was like, wait a minute, it's in the shadow. And sure enough, it is. Like, so the big vines and all the grimminess that's in front of her is all kind of like a distraction from the fact that this nightmare grim is hiding in the shadows in the floor. And so she's like, there's a reason that, or she asked about, Crescent Rose. She's like, why is the gun backwards? And then Weiss like basically tells her everything is for a reason, which we do see. Because if you look at John has that huge sword that he can barely handle because he had, basically later on, he was going to fight, Jacques. And it's the only thing that can basically tear down the Nightmare Grim, which again, Weiss put this in there through her subconscious. She's fighting the Grim within her dream. And it's very interesting. Even though we don't physically see her fighting it, she's been fighting it this entire time. And speaking of that scene, the whole sword thing where he couldn't barely, yield it, he drops it, the Jacques, sentinel basically trips over and his leg gets like completely blown off or just kind of disintegrates off. And then Pyrrha tells little baby Weisses, and that's what I'm calling them, the little children Weisses, to use their semblance to help, lessen the load of the weight of the sword for John. And they do, and he's able to use it effectively and basically, cut down Jacques. And I love how the last thing that you see Jacques say is, I want to, play with my family. I want to play with my family, and it's really Weiss speaking something that she probably wants her father to say. But anyway, so back to Ruby. So we pretty much think that the reason that the gun is on the bottom instead of the top is because it's a clue that she needs to shoot the ground because that's where the shadow is. Now, something does happen in this episode that I didn't think they were going to do. But I guess because I feel like Ruby doesn't get that she did it, maybe it's okay. And at some point after she's trying to defeat the Nightmare Grim, she's shooting it, the vines start grabbing her because, it's trying to save itself. And she uses her silver eyes. And it was actually a really impressive use of it. But we all know in the OG series, it was the whole battle in Beaconfell, and she was on the roof with Pyrrha, and Cinder. And that's when she used her silver eyes for the first time and she blacks out. Well, I don't think that Ruby even got that this happened. I mean, she literally used it. It was disintegrating all of the vines and all of this crap around her. She was able to basically take out, a majority of the nightmare distractions using her silver eyes. And she was able to free Weiss. She was able to take it out in the end just by shooting it, but it weakened to the point where she was able to take it out. And she has no idea. We do see that Ozpin realized it because Ozpin is shady as hell even in this version. He knew of course he knows about her silver eyes because, we know who Ozpin is. So, but I just thought that was really interesting that poor Ruby, she thinks that she did all this with just, strategic skill and her semblance. And in reality, she did it using her silver eyes. Just has no clue. But I do love that they didn't show her use it again when they were freeing Blake in this. So that is a thing. But yeah, so Weiss is free. And then Weiss is like, what's happening? What am I wearing? And then she sees Blake is possessed, and Yang's like, Yang, who had been fighting Nicholas, who also used her freaking upgraded tech that Weiss gave her. And we got to see her eyes turn red, and she got her little blonde, moment where she loses her shit, because her semblance has always been the more damage she takes, the stronger she becomes. So we got to see her use that. And she got to take out Nicholas. And they actually showed a scene where younger Weiss is talking to Grandpa Nicholas. Because if you know anything about her grandfather, he was nothing like her dad. He actually liked to help people. He wanted to make an empire that could help people, not one that Jacques wanted to be like, basically this dictating, bastard. So I thought that was really interesting that we got to see the real Nicholas. And it's really sad that he died so young, because I really think that Willow would not have been an alcoholic and the kids would not be as traumatized as they are, if had he lived. And unfortunately, Jacques got in at the right time, convinced him he loved his daughter, and then the moment he died, yeah, we all know the story. So I think that is really interesting that Weiss, maybe you have to see these little chunks of Weiss's life, and her friends could never unsee this. They can't unsee it now because they've experienced it. So but yeah, so Yang defeats him. And so the big problem is they have to save Blake. Because I'm telling you, Nega Blake was scarier than Nega Weiss. Nega Blake was like, I'm just going to kill you. Nega Weiss is like, I'll put you to sleep. I'm going to protect you and lock you up because you're precious, blah, blah, blah. And Nega Blake's like, no, it's time to die. So scary. But when Weiss like comes to her senses, and Ruby's hugging her and she sees Blake, and here's why she's like, oh no, I didn't even realize that Blake was infected. What kind of person am I? What am I? And they're like, no, actually, you were the one. They didn't tell her that immediately, but it was actually her dream and they were only in there because of her. But it does lead to a pretty epic scene. Like, I love the silhouette, like the whole silhouette fight that they did against the Nightmare Grim. I mean, they were whooping its ass. And these girls, the way they fight is so much more epic than it is in the actual Rooster Teeth series, which is sad. And I know you can do a lot more with the anime style than, I guess, the 2D animation we get, which really looks like a webtoon. But I don't know. I just feel like they really grasped who these characters are supposed to be better than Rooster Teeth. And to be fair, also Montium is no longer around, but you know what I'm saying? Like, they had the blueprint. They should have been better, I guess, is what I'm saying. But yeah, the whole fight kicked ass. It just kicked ass. And they freed Blake. But what really got me is that Blake ended up stabbing Nega Blake in the back herself. So she killed herself. She killed herself. And she also killed the version of herself that she hated. So there's a lot of symbolism in that. And that's a psychiatrist's dream, I'm sure. A lot of this has been. Because Ruby was the one that freed Weiss. But Blake freed herself. Although they did have a cute moment right before she did that where Yang was the one that was pulling her out of herself. Because she screamed for Yang. She didn't say guys. She said Yang. And then Yang pulled her out. So, we're getting our Bumblebee, of course. Hashtag Bumblebee. Very, very adorable. But yeah, she ends up killing herself. And the way Blake did it was like, Blake was like, that's who I used to be. I'm like, we all should be concerned. Like, Yang was like, what? Looking like, what the hell just happened? And she even made the comment, you didn't have to do, fight yourself or get the last, hit in, basically. And Blake's like, that was my former self. And I'm like, oh, okay. Cray. But they all end up back in the real world. Luckily, Xian's her aura held out long enough so that she could keep her semblance going, so they wouldn't be trapped. And of course, Blake had that last coin. She was able to free herself, which is cool. But I will tell you, when Blake was wailing on her, I was like, wow, that was very cool. Like, she was beating. She's like, I'm just giving you a little punch, little punches to wake your butt up, basically. And it was actually Yang that freed. So Yang technically freed Blake. And then Blake finished herself off, which is so weird. But yeah, so they're back in the real world. And what I thought is interesting is that Weiss did not know until she didn't really know until after the fight. They were telling her it was her dream. She is mortified. She is so embarrassed. She's like, you guys were in my head. I mean, the Grim infected me. All this crap happened. Don't tell anybody. And they're like, well, that's kind of impossible because at this point, and mostly everyone knows. Like, I mean, we won't tell you what we saw in your mind, but yeah, everybody pretty much knows. I love how she was like, who are these children who obviously look like little versions of herself? And they're like, yeah, you created them and you called them the Sillies. And she's like, what? Like, that whole thing was crazy to me. But now that they're back in the real world, Team RWBY is back and they're, picking on Weiss. I do wonder, because episode 12 is called Best Day Ever. Is episode 12 going to be a precursor to another arc? Because there were rumors that we're getting more anime style from this company. So like, I do wonder if this is just a setup for the next, arc, which I'm here for. I'm really down to see some of the villains that I would love to see Cinder and Emerald and Mercury and all of them in this anime style, infiltrate the school and the Follow Beacon and see how that all plays out. Because I think it would be very cool to see it in anime or animated in this style. So, because we do get a lot more character development than we've ever gotten in the volumes that we've seen with RWBY. So, but I don't know, like I said, there's so much to it. Like, I love that the little symbolisms, like you have when RWBY freed Weiss, they had this moment where they're talking to each other. And, Weiss is like, even though I have a family, I've always felt alone. And Ruby's like, well, can you trust me? Basically, can we be friends? And you see when Ruby wakes up, the dress that Weiss usually wears when she's singing, especially when she's singing Mirror Mirror, is like floating in the air and moving. And it's like she's giving that look, because that's the loneliest girl of all songs. So, I mean, it's like that. She's coming to terms with the fact that she doesn't have to be alone. Like, there's so much symbolism. But my question is, well, Weiss, since Weiss doesn't have a memory of a lot of it, I don't know how much growth she gets now, because she technically doesn't remember a lot of things that happen. They have to tell her these things. So I don't know. But I will say I have a lot of faith in her because of how she reacted with Blake. I think, to me, that's the most standout thing for me, is that for somebody who's supposed to hate the Faunus and prejudiced against the Faunus and obviously hates the White Fang, she was hurt. It wasn't just anger. She was visibly hurt that Blake was fighting her, even when she was Nega Weiss. And even when she was freed, she's like fighting. She's like, you're going to give Blake back to me. I'm like, I mean, that's friends. I love, like I said, I really love them, because they really are, as Blake said in the last episode, they're basically mirror reflections of each other. They both have the same trauma and the same hurt from different sides of the same battle. And it's like seeing your enemy and becoming your friend, frenemies. So I really, really enjoy the evolution of Blake and Weiss's friendship, probably more than anything else in this series, because it's just awesome. I love how they dealt with it. Like, again, in the original RWBY arc, we did see them talk, and they did kind of, there's specific scenes where they talk to each other and they kind of say, oh yeah. And like, you'll have Weiss say, I'm sorry for my, complacency and everything that happened with my family's company and my family name. And, in terms of how the Faunus were treated and all that. And Blake's accepting that, and so I get, and then of course, Blake coming to terms that the White Fang is now a terrorist organization. All that stuff does happen in the OG series. It's just so much deeper in this version, because you're really seeing inside of their minds and hearts to see what they're thinking and what they're feeling. So I don't know. I'm really here for it. I am. If you just really sat here and dissected this really is a psychiatrist's dream. I mean, it really is. It's like coming to terms in the most aggressive way in your mind. You're literally fighting every aspect of yourself to reinvent yourself. Because Weiss is basically, she has an aversion to change because she doesn't understand it and it scares her. And Blake, it's not that Blake is scared of change. She's scared that nobody will accept that she's changed. So they both have different fears, but they pretty much are the same. Blake and Weiss are pretty much the same character in a way, if you really think about it, just from very drastic viewpoints, opposite viewpoints. And Blake has parents that are very doting and loving, and Weiss's family is dysfunctional as hell. And it's like a yin and they're basically yin and yang. They even have the colors. If you really think about it, white and black hair, white hair, yin and yang. So yeah, yin and yang are Blake and Weiss. Now what we get further from that, again, I don't know, but I am curious, because like I said, the next episode is entitled Best Day Ever. And I don't know what that means. Like, I don't know what that means. So there's that. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed this episode. It, like, a lot of people, after I did my review last week, I looked at some of the bulletin boards, like, just to see what people were saying. And a lot of people were like really upset with with last week's episode. They were like, it's kind of more filler, which I don't get, because I kind of feel like we got a lot of insight into Blake. So I don't feel like it was, as useless as a lot of people are complaining the Bruto series is right now. But I do think that this, for most people, hopefully made up for it, because it was nonstop and they resolved it, and they still had time to make fun of Weiss at the end. So, take it as what it is. All right, let's get some questions. Hello, Kevin. How are you? Godzilla, how are you? Thank you. I'm glad you enjoy these reviews. I'm trying to catch up here. Like I said earlier, if you didn't tune in when I first started, I'm trying to figure out if I'm doing my Stargirl episode 2 review today, which I probably will. I probably will do it. I need to watch it. So it'll probably be about 3 p.m. Central Standard Time if I do that review. All right, I forgot their weapons were upgraded in Weiss's dream. Yeah, she made everything possible for them. Like, if you really think about it, if I wanted to kill my team, they would not be able to fight. They would not be able to use weapons. They wouldn't be able to use their semblances at all. hell, I would not have let them in. I'm like, that's how I would just have been possessed and died. I would not have accepted them into my heart. Therefore, when they tried to enter me, they would just die because that's what happens if you're not accepted. I guess you run the risk of being, killed. So that's what would have happened. I think that she, on some level, was fighting the entire time. And when her team got there, she made it very easy for them to get around and to do all of these things. Think about it. She didn't really try very hard to restrain them, even without the coins. They really could have gotten away. So, like, she was helping them, especially Ruby, defeat this nightmare grim inside her subconsciously the entire time. So, yeah, I love Weiss. I really do. And I do agree with you. They barely use them. To be fair, they barely were around the negative grit or the nightmare grim to use them because they weren't going to use them on Weiss. Like, I mean, yeah, they used a little bit to fight negative Weiss, but at that point, they probably were like, if we defeat this one, does this hurt the real Weiss? They probably didn't know that. Which, I mean, how would they know that? They don't have this. This is a brand new semblance. We've never had like anybody who displayed the ability to seal nightmare grims like Shion. That's a completely new invention for this anime. So it's a thing. Yeah, Blake, this idea was obviously going to backfire. Yeah, but she did have a point. If Yang had done it, she would have been ignored by Weiss. Weiss would have been like, what is wrong with you? Like, are you just causing problems? Like, I'm tired of you. Just go sit down. Blake could get under her skin because of the kind of already pre-made prejudices and dramas they both had. So it worked. Blake losing control of her nightmare was only to be expected. True. But I'm telling you, terrifying. I'm literally seeing what Raven would be like if Raven just went all out and was like, F it. F all of it. Oh yeah, the fight scenes in the anime are awesome. They are amazing. They're absolutely amazing. And I've always loved RWBY as a character, but she's so much more adorable in this version. She's cute. And she's like, I don't know, should I come over and play with you? Do you want to be my friend? She is so cute and a little naive, but very, very adorable. I love it. And Yang is so much more badass in this version. It's like that voice actress for her, literally the tone is more like she's been around the block a few times. I could see her being an ex-mafia member or whatever. That's how, our, what do you call them in Japanese? I forgot the name. Oh, what are they called? It's going to come to me. They basically have a term that they use in Japan for girls who are in gangs during school. And I used to know this. And I don't remember it right now. I'm pretty sure it starts with a G and I cannot remember it right now. But it'll pop into my brain, I'm sure. But she reminds me of that. Like she literally has her own gang at school. She's got like a cigarette hanging out of her mouth. I mean, it's just how they have her. That whole attitude is just amazing to me. Yep, in that Bumblebee moment, we got it. I mean, I saw it going there when they were fighting in the last episode, when they started arguing back and forth, because again, Blake is more logic and Yang is more, physical, punch first, ask questions later type. In a way, relationship wise, they are yin and yang, but they work. So it's a thing. No doubt the next episode is a simple slice of life episode. I hope so. There's so many things they can do. I mean, but really the sky's the limit because this is not really canon. So they can really do anything in the next episode. But what I really hope is happening is I'm hoping that this is precursor for a brand new story arc. Something that has nothing to do with being in anybody's mind, is basically the girls as a team now learning not only to still function as a team, but to also be against, people that have just as badass semblances as they do. I think that would be really cool. But who knows? We'll see. Filler, the anime has given us some great character development. I know. I don't know. People like it's just like She-Hulk. People just like to bitch about things all of the time. It is what it is. I don't understand it. I mean, hell, look at Disney Plus. We have so many people that are upset that we have Black Inquisitors. I mean, it's just so stupid. So when I look at the nerdom as a whole and fandom as a whole, even though I am a fan and a nerd, I like to be objective, but I don't like to make people feel like shit about their choices. And so I'm never going to do that. I mean, I'm just not. I can disagree with you and not make you feel like you're an idiot. So I don't know what they're seeing and what they're watching, but it's obviously not what I'm watching, so it's completely fine. I don't know what's happening with that. I don't think that any moment in this anime has been, useless or filler or not anything that is literally plot driven. And if you don't see it that way, then maybe you have a problem seeing plot driven material. That's basically how I feel about that. So, but yeah, all in all though, a very, very good episode. And like I said, there's so many things. If you just really look at it, the silver eyes, we got Bumblebee, we get to see Pyrrha, how big her crush is on Jun. I mean, both in the dream and outside. She's even supporting her while he's unconscious. I mean, because Teen Juniper was standing right there and she was smiling at him the whole time and saying, "Good work, Jun." So sad. And I really would hate for the next arc to be the one that leads to her death, because that might be what's going to happen. That's so sad. I will say though, since Jen went into Weiss's mind and helped, if they have the episode where they have the school dance and he's asking her out and she's like, nope, and she's being really frosty to him, it's going to seem like kind of like, reverting back in a way. It's like, oh, you're being a bitch to him again. Cool. I really hope that's not what it is though. I generally want to see where this series goes. Honestly, I mean, I'm really into this series. Not saying I'm not looking forward to volume 9 of RWBY, because it's weird where they ended up, from what I've seen of the preview. But I'm really invested in this series, and I think that they have a lot of potential to do very good character arcs and story arcs based on the material they already have. Or even, I digress, do your own thing. This is obviously not canon. You could literally take RWBY and go a completely different direction, completely different interactions and all of that. So, I mean, Ozpin lived a long time. Just saying, we could deal with a lot of shady stuff that Ozpin causes them, I've read a lot of fanfics about Ozpin doing some really crazy, off the wall, but very believable crap. So, I mean, there's a lot of material out there, but that's just my opinion. But that is RWBY Ice Queendom episode 11. Again, I really, really enjoyed this episode. I'm glad we have Team RWBY back. I'm glad we got to really have Blake face her demon and kill herself, and Weiss basically waking up, being kind of adorable herself, pouting about, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed, which kind of makes sense because, her name and her image is all she really has right now. Well, now she has her team though. And them laughing at her. I just think that was very, very cute. So I really cannot wait to see all of them interact next week. So this would be, our last episode, sadly, unless they announce something else, which they might. But I am going to go, because if I want to do a Stargirl season 3 episode 2 review, which I think it's entitled Frenemies Part 2, then I need to go watch the episode, and I will set the stream up on here. So I'm thinking it is 24 p.m. Central Standard Time. So yeah, it'll probably be 3 p.m. my time, Central Standard Time, that we will have the Stargirl kind of review. And I might throw in some nerd news too, because I have seen some things around the interwebs in these internet streets about DC, about, the Arrowverse, where I guess we really can't call it Arrowverse anymore, and just other news bits that we can talk about as well. So be on the lookout on my community tab. I will post that link. So make sure that, you make sure you're notified when it happens. But yeah, guys, if it is day for you, have a very good day. If it is night for you, have a very good night. And I will see you in my next stream and in my next video. Bye, guys.